Alright, hello and welcome back to another Mythical Beast deck profile, just a week after we saw the last one, but I think this one definitely has an edge over the last one, especially taking some tips from myself in the video I just put out yesterday, and this worked as a very good example for them, and I think this one is just definitely not a lot stronger, but definitely noticeably stronger than the last one I put out. So this one, for now, is the definitive one. I've been trying 7 different builds recently, and this is the one I keep coming back to. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys this one today. Alright, so our ratio on the actual mythical beasts themselves hasn't changed, but just in case someone hasn't seen the last one and is here for this one, I'll go through them all again. So I'll just go ahead and run through their pendulum effects real quick here. They all have an effect. They're all scale 4s, and they all have to be the only card in your pendulum scales to activate their effect, and you activate their effect by destroying them in this scale. So Master Cerberus can add 1 mythical beast card from your deck to your hand, except himself. Jackal can special 1 mythical beast card from your extra deck, except himself. Garuda can pop 1 spell and trap on the field. Medusa can special 1 monster that you can place a spell counter on from the grave. Basilisk in scale pops himself to shuffle 1 up from your scale back to the deck and draw 1 card. And Jackal in scale pops himself to put a spell counter on something. Now we'll quickly go over their monster effects. So Master Cerberus and King Jackal each get 2 spell counters when a card is activated, and the rest of them only get 1. But Master Cerberus can remove 4 from the field to banish 1 monster, one of your opponent's monsters, and gain attack equal to that monster's original attack till the end of your opponent's turn. King Jackal can remove 2 spell counters to negate 1 monster effect on the field when it's activated as a quick effect. Garuda just actually, on-field Garuda just gains spell counters, but he actually has an effect in hand, so he's actually a hand trap, and you can remove 3 spell counters from your field to special summon this card when your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, special summon him, and then return the monsters your opponent summoned back to the hand. So they actually gave this deck a spell counter hand trap. That's so cool. But anyway, Medusa on field can remove 2 spell counters to halve the attack of 1 monster on the field. Basilisk can remove 3 to add 1 back from your extra deck to your hand. And Jackal can remove 3 from the field to tribute himself and special summon 1 mythical beast monster from your deck. Now the reason I'm going with the ratios I am, obviously Cerberus is the searcher, Jackal is recovery, Garuda is our spell and trap removal, and is also a monster, so we don't have to run things like Cosmic Cyclone. Medusa is only at 1 because more often than not we're not having things go to grave unless we're using 1-for-1 or Magical Exemplar. So he's really just something we want to search if we need him. So we're just running the 1 of him because we really don't want to see him unless we're searching him. Basilisk is only at 2 just because he's another one that I like to special from deck more often than not, although his effect in hand is still pretty good, so we're going with 2 copies of him, and honestly Jackal gets us any of them, so we're running 3 copies of him. He's pretty much the main play of your deck to go into the big boys up here. And for our last monsters, we're running 1 copy of Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, because he actually has some decent synergy with the deck. Now the only effect, we're never going to have him actually in the monster zone. We're only going to ever have him in the scale. And that's because he can search us Jackal during the end phase. And we can search him off of Duelist Alliance. So Duelist Alliance gets us 1 spell counter. Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon gets us another spell counter. And because we'd have to have something in scale already to activate Duelist Alliance, that's 3 spell counters right there. So that makes Jack alive. And that gives us another one for next turn. So we can keep going off again on the following turn, which is pretty good. And he's also a scale 4, which is important because we can add him back off of Pendulum Paradox, which I'll just go over now. You can add 2 face-up pendulum monsters with the same pendulum scale but different names from your extra deck to your hand, and that's also searchable off of Duelist Alliance. So basically, we can use Duelist Alliance first to see Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, get some recovery that way, then use Pendulum Paradox to add, either 2 Mythical Beasts back, or a Mythical Beast and an Odd Eyes, then use his effect again to get another Jackal or more recovery for next turn, so he works pretty damn well, and that was actually a suggestion in the comments. Magical Exemplar. This gains 2 spell counters every time a spell card is activated, and once per turn you can remove any number of spell counters from this card, special summon 1 spellcaster type monster from your hand or graveyard whose level is equal to the number of spell counters you removed. So she's basically a free well of spell counters. So we normal summon her, we activate a spell, then we can remove one from her to special Jackal, activate another one, then Jackal's effect triggers. We still have a monster on field with a spell counter. She's getting 2 for every spell card that activates, so she's giving us a lot more spell counters for what we're actually using, in addition to still letting us summon our Jackal. So I've definitely been liking her, and I actually was running Medusa at 2 for her, but again, because she's not a hard one to turn, so if you can use her to special herself, you can link with 2 of them, use the other one to bring the other ones back, and just keep kind of looping that way. But it takes up a lot of resources, and there's just no... you usually won't be getting 3 of them, and you'll have to be linking with some Mythical Beast cards instead of, resolving their effects. So it's not as strong as it sounds, and there's not, like, a really strong link, too, that I really want to go into yet. So I cut Medusa back down to 1, and if we get a hand where we can loop these, we'll just, go ahead and search it out. Moving on to the spells, we have 1 copy of Upstart because it draws us a card and gets a spell counter, so it's essentially just, replaces itself like normal, but actually helps our deck function. 3 copies of Magical Citadel of Endymion, along with 2 Terraforming, because this works the same as Magical Exemplar, where it's just something to put on the field to gain even more spell counters, and you can actually activate it, once you have a Jackal on the field for a free spell counter there. Then 1 more spell, lets you resolve his effect, so you're resolving his effect only activating 2 spells instead of 3, just little stuff like that. It's just a constant source of spell counters that really helps out for recovery and things. 3 copies of Duelist Alliance. Obviously it searches as Pendulum Paradox, which is insane recovery from this deck, since all of our monsters are scale 4, and Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon to actually set us up if we don't open too well. Basically already said all we have to about Pendulum Paradox. And now I'm throwing in 2 copies of Desires. Now, I'm not super liking Desires in this deck because there are a lot of times where you're going to run yourself down to, only 1 King Jackal left in deck, and that's after Basilisking 1 back and things like that. So I really don't like banishing because there's a lot of pulling stuff out of deck in this deck. So Desires is one of those cards we have to be careful with. You have to, get some cards out of deck before you actually resolve it. But it does help, if we win the game, it doesn't matter. Next turn doesn't matter if we win the game, basically. The same theory that always goes along with Desires there. 1 copy of 1 for 1 because it gets us Jackal. We can then use Magical Exemplar or Medusa to bring our discarded monster back. I actually switched out Spell Power Grasp for Toon Table. I talked about this in my last video, but I'll go ahead and mention it here as well. Now, obviously, Spell Power Grasp is a higher payoff immediately. It's 2 spell counters and searches another copy of itself, whereas Toon Table is only 1 spell counter but searches another copy of itself. But Spell Power Grasp caps out at giving us 2 spell counters a turn, whereas Toon Table of Contents can give us 4 spell counters a turn. And Toon Table, say we just have Toon Table and Jackal. This lets us immediately resolve Jackal's effect. We can immediately, with just 1 Toon Table in hand, instead of using up 4 cards in hand to summon something from deck, we're only using up 2 cards in hand. And then also once we get something else out, we still have the Toon Whirl in hand to give that some spell counters if we need it. And that's just using 2 cards in hand. It also deck thins, so you're not drawing into more copies of Spell Power Grasp later in the game. So overall, I think it's just better for the deck thinning, and it has more of an instant payoff. And switching things up, we're going with 3 copies of Solemn Scolding here. Now, originally I was running Solemn Strike, but Solemn Strike was a bit of an overkill in the deck because we already kind of turbo out King Jackal up here, who is a monster negate, and there are turns where we'll get 2 or 3 of him on the board at once. So having 2 of him and 2 strike sets just kind of overkill. If they Raigeki or use some spell cards, you can't stop them at all. Whereas, having 2 of him in a Scolding set, even though it's just being able to stop 1 card, if you hit the the most important card, you can generally do some damage with this. And that's why I went with Scolding over Strike, whereas Strike is just adding to what the deck already does, and it so much that we don't even need it. Scolding is adding something we don't have in the form of spell and trap negation, and it can negate anything if it comes down to that. The extra deck, I'm pretty sure, is the same. It's honestly not that important. Occasionally we'll go into the Metalfoes Pendulum Monster or Link Bell. Link Rebo if our hand's pretty bad. And occasionally Tornado Dragon does come up a lot. You'll actually see that in one of the replays. But I'll just go ahead and breeze through it here. Diamond Dire, Castdale, Tornado Dragon. For our 6s we have Naruto and M7. For our 8s we have Felgrand and Hope Harbinger. For our links, we have Link Rebo as our sole Link 1, Proxy Dragon, Link Bell, Akashic, and Metalfoes Electrum as our Link 2s, Decode Talker and Ningirsu as our Link 3s, and one Borlo Dragon as our standalone Link 4. Alright, so that does it for me rambling on about the best deck ever, so let's go ahead and get into the replays here. In this one, we're up against Counter Fairies here, obviously with the new support, the new Parasath, Angels, Sage, Minerva, things like that. You can see the new trap card there, and we're just playing. Also, you might notice in some of these duels the builds are slightly different for Mythical Beasts, but not different enough that it like warrants a complete change. Like you'll see a strike instead of a scolding in one of them, but it's nothing that alters the outcome to a degree where it actually needs to not be shown or anything like that. So just a little note on that there. Let's go ahead and get to this one. So we're going to open decently here. I can't remember exactly how, but we'll go ahead and search the Basilisk, and we're just going to go ahead and do some stuff there. We drew the Toon World, which sucks, but we're still able to go off. It still gets us some spell counters there. And that's why I went into the Master Cerberus turn 1, was just to build up a well of spell counters to resolve our Jackal, and so we could resolve Garuda if the need arises. Now he's going to Duality and do his thing there. I'm not too scared right now. Obviously I have some Spell and Trap Discretion. He's going to hit the fucking Exemplar, which pissed me off. God, I was ready to go off with that thing. He's going to negate our Spell and Trap Destruction because he has to, and now that he doesn't have any backer, we're free to just go ahead and give him a good firm dicking here, basically. Because we're just going to put up some massive attack power. There's just nothing he could do at that point, really. In our next one, we're up against Cyverse here, which is interesting. It's obviously not good, but it has the beginnings of something there. It'll probably be at least decent down the road, but right now it's like it's 5 years too late, pretty much. But we didn't open super well, as you can see. We opened the Medusa and the Exemplar, which isn't bad, but we don't have anything else to link with. We don't have any way to bring anything back off of it, so at the most we were doing is a rank 4. But yes, I believe he's going first, so he'll go ahead and he's just going to make a Decode Talker with one targeting negate here, and a Signet Backdoor, which basically searches by banishing Cyberse monsters. So we actually drew the Master Cerberus for turn, so we can actually go off here, which is amazing. So as you can see, basically Magical Exemplar there. It's just putting in the work of, I thought I paused, but apparently I didn't pause. But Magical Exemplar is just putting in the work there of its, a well of spell counters. So now we just have extra spell counters we can pull from. If they don't out it next turn, we can use its effect again. And it really just helps us build up, and that's basically what you're seeing here. So we'll obviously swing over one of those so we can then have enough attack power to get over the Decode Talker. He'll go ahead and use the backdoor to search something for next turn and banish the Decode Talker. So that would be coming back on his turn, but we will have a monster negate ready to go. We'll go ahead and use that, which is going to special one back, so we'll just go ahead and stop that there since she doesn't have much in hand. And then I guess I forgot to read it all the way, so I'll get him a token and let him swing over the King Jackal. But it really doesn't matter because we have enough, we Pendulum Paradox last turn, so we have enough that we can just keep going off, and as you can see, he didn't out the Exemplar, so we haven't even used our normal summon yet. And basically, it's just a case of, continuing to go off. He'll negate to save the back row, which I believe is like, oh yeah, it specials one of those, and then I believe specials one back from banished when you, attack directly or something of that nature. And you can see we're just going the hell off. We'll swing first with that because he's going to special back the Decode Talker, but it doesn't matter because we have a Swift game on board. And in this one, we're up against Raid Raptors here. Now he's going to make one misplay first turn, but other than that, I think it's all pretty standard here. So we'll go ahead and roll it. You can see this is where he makes the misplay, is instead of using Nest to search one, well, he has two monsters, he goes right into the Force Tricks, but that's just a small thing. I do stuff like that all the time. So we'll go ahead and do that and basically just set himself up for next turn and pass it over to us. And here you can see, obviously we have two strikes, but if one of those was a scolding, it'll basically be the same end result in the duel here. So we'll go ahead and use Terraforming here. Actually, I should have done Cerberus first, then Terraforming, then Endymion to maximize on spell counters, but I did it backwards this time, so, we all make our mistakes. But again, we have Toon Table, the infinite well of spell counters, so we'll go ahead and still get our King Jackal out from there and set him up with some spell counters. I believe I also should have resolved Duelist Alliance in there whenever I had something in scale, but that's just, you know, again, we all make our mistakes. So we'll set the 2 strikes. Obviously, we'd just be setting 1 Scolding, you know, if things were different. And as you can see, we're going to go ahead and negate that here. And then he's going to go ahead and Ragaki. And obviously, this is where things would change a little bit. If we had this Scolding, it would actually end up better for us. So I'm not showing off, you know, like anything better. As you can see, the build would have actually been better with Scoldings instead. So we'll go ahead, lose that. He'll special the Fuzzy. Now he'll use the Nest. He'll go ahead and set himself up with a 4 Strix, although we will stop that. So we'll draw a Magical Exemplar for turn, and it's pretty much just turned into Magical Exemplar Beatdown at this point. He's actually gonna draw a Storming for turn, so he has a little bit of a safety net there. We'll go ahead and deck then, get some spell counters up. You know, do some more swinging. He's obviously not going to waste the Storming on a Magical Exemplar. And he's going to draw yet another one for turn, so he's sitting pretty back there. But we got the Master Cerberus, so we're ready to go off. And we're not swinging into 2 back row. Oh, no. Now we'll finally resolve the Alliance for the Pendulum Paradox, so we can go ahead and search the Garuda. We'll go ahead and use that to out one of the back row. We'll use Exemplar to special our Jackal. Activate our King Jackal for some spell counters. Use this effect to special back the Garuda. Go ahead and special a Master Cerberus and go into Tornado Dragon to pop the other Storming, and Master Cerberus is just enough to push for game there. And that just shows off pretty much like the kind of rank 4 capabilities that Exemplar adds. It doesn't come up too much, but when it does, as you can see, we wouldn't have won the duel if it wasn't for that. But anyway, that will do it for our second look at Mythical Beasts here, and definitely not the last one. There will be some more of this on the channel for sure, as it's shaping up to be one of my favorite decks of all time. It doesn't come out for 3 months, and I already have everything that's out now ordered and ready to go for it. And I'm probably going to annoy some people by proxying it early. But I can't help it. It's so good. Ugh, I love it. But anyway, yeah, be on the lookout for more of this on the channel. And this is definitely the definitive build for now. So it means it isn't definitive, but you know, whatever. Anyway, usual plugs at the end of the episode. I have a Discord. There'll be a link to that down in the description. It's just a cool place to hang out, chill, talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, among other things. And I'll have a link to my Patreon as well. Now, with my Patreon, no usual content or anything will be gated off. Everyone will get the usual content that I've been providing for, you know, a year now. But supporting me on there will actually get you extra duels that don't air in the final cuts of videos like this or the worst deck of all time. Just extra duels that don't, you know, make it to the final cut. I think I already said that, whatever. But that's just like $1 a month. Everyone will get that if they support, no matter how much it is. But there's no pressure to support me. Again, none of the usual content or anything will be gated off. And there's no pressure to support. It's just if you have a little extra to give, it would be greatly appreciated. But obviously, I can understand if you don't. I'm in college. I know what having no money is like. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.